Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Haven't listened to that one since
a year. Oh my God.
Um, wow, I guess I didn't get any comments that there was distortion, but I was hearing distortion in the sound. Um, but I didn't get any comments. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to meet my new friend, Nemeth. Nemeth.
Maintenance, that's right.
And or Nemeth, right?
Yeah.
Nay, yes. And although, to tell you the truth, as when we were talking earlier, I felt like we had met.
Yeah. That's,
Maybe it's just because we think alike.
yeah. Well, I was in LA for 2 years, 2001 to
Oh,
2002.
okay, right.
I think we probably met there.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. That was really beautiful. Who was the guitarist?
So that's Gilad Hexelman. Incredible, incredible.
Gilar,
Gilad
Gilad,
Hexelman.
Exelman,
Yeah, Hexelman with the H. Hexelman. Yeah.
Hexelman.
He lives
Where's
here.
what
Yeah.
kind of a name is that? Where is he from?
He's from Israel originally.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a beautiful trio. Wow.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
clean and you know, and my friend Roland Ascarons, who's on here, who's a guitarist,
Oh, okay.
kind of a hidden guitarist. Roland, that's how I'm announcing. He used to play guitar, then he kind of stopped doing that, but he has several. He has a bunch of guitars. He's a guitarist, but anyway, he said kind of sounds like Weather Report to him, which yeah, it does, especially when you started to sing.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's. I mean, we did a whole tour last year. Well, 2019. So last year. Oh my God. Time just flies. Yeah. So 2019 summer, we did a whole tour with this trio in
Oh,
Europe, and it was
oh
an
my gosh.
amazing experience. Yeah.
Well, watching that, it actually makes me miss sitting in front of the band. The Blue Whale,
Oh yeah. Of course. Of
yeah,
course.
which unfortunately closed. But many's the night I sat in the front row, and just I always would tell people it sometimes it takes a lot getting yourself up and out, but when you get there,
Mm,
oh God, it's just it's
yeah.
such a, fulfilling and nourishing experience. Little did we know that we were going to be in serious missing that. Gosh, such a
Wow.
different universe.
Yeah. It's it's incredible how from one day to another everything can be changed, and we never think about that. We think like, okay, our life, I have to do this, that, and then we never think about like, yeah, all of these things can be taken away. Everything. It's just it's incredible, and I think we have to really think about that and even more appreciate the moment that we are in. It's yeah.
You know how they say that you should wake up and immediately kind of take note of what you're grateful for?
Yeah. Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, but you're right. It's so we've been running like the little hamster on the wheel. We just like that's our universe. We're just running.
Yeah.
And when people die around us, I mean, we will note that, and sometimes that really changes our lives.
Mm,
But still, there doesn't seem to be enough awareness about that kind of stuff.
mm,
And I say that to myself. I mean, I consider myself a person who reaches for a lot of that information, very often, and I don't think a day goes by that I don't have some kind of deep conversation with somebody. But still, it's so easy to be mesmerized and hypnotized by distractions, you know.
yes.
Did
Yeah.
you ever, my friend Taylor Hatch brought up the book, The Inner Game of Music, which I don't think I've ever read. And it's been out since the 80s. And so I've been reading it. I just started reading it. Have you read that book?
No, I was just looking the other day. I have the inner game of tennis.
It's the same man who wrote that
Mm.
collaborated with a musician,
Oh wow.
uh, and yeah, and it's great. I mean, and it's what's interesting for me is that I've been writing this book for years, and I've been trying to edit it and like finish it now, and but it's actually about the philosophy of life and singing and jazz, how
Mm.
they tie in, and the lessons are similar. And as soon as I opened this book and started reading, there were similar ideas and information coming through, which I thought was really interesting. It's funny how life works like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love that how when you have your thoughts and all of these things, and sometimes you read something and you are like, oh wow. So, like it's kind of like confirming some of your
Yes.
thoughts and some of like, wow, other people are thinking, and then, like you have like, oh, okay, so that's kind of like a connection point for me. I love that. It's so good. Yeah.
Well, I have to say now that you're saying that, I remember that um, I think it was when I was in fifth grade, and I my English teacher gave us the book Siddhartha.
Oh yeah.
And I was totally blown away, totally changed my life because I didn't realize that other people thought like I thought, you
Hmm.
know? And so, yeah, so as to what you're saying, gosh, one sentence can really just change your life, and well, isn't that the problem of the whole world is that people individualize. They think that something's being taken away from them, or they're the only people who think and act like this, or that it's happening to. We were speaking about that before. Um, how there's always someone in the world doing worse than you are.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa,
And also, whatever we are going through, other people went through that. So, and other people are going through that right now. And so there is always a connection point. Like, no matter what you are going through, other people experience that. Some people can help because they went through that, and some other people are going through the same thing. So you can go through together. And there are people, no matter where you are, what you are doing, that people went through worst things and they made it out of that. So I know sometimes it's easy to feel sorry about ourselves, but whenever that moment comes, you think, I mean, even just like you see, like people, like whenever I have a student and it's like, oh, I didn't have time to practice, or I couldn't do that, couldn't it's like you go on YouTube. I send this video of, there is this guy that has no arm and no legs, has the drumstick uh, taped into his shoulder, and he plays drums. So you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah.
really, you think that you are going through some tough time? Well, guess what? Yeah.
Right, right. Wow. Yeah. How do you think that, how do you think your perspective in this kind of area has affected your playing?
Well, I mean, I always appreciate the fact that I'm able to do what I'm doing, and I feel that this is a huge, it's an incredible blessing and a privilege to be able to play music, give something to people, and make a living out of that, and traveling around the world. And yes, I also have some moments, when you are like, no, I should this, I should that. But I always remind myself like how incredible it is that most people, like I don't know the percentage, but a huge percentage of people, they go to work because that's a means to make money, and then they can do something that they like to do.
Yeah.
And I always like every time, like I think to myself how blessed I am, because every day I wake up, I can do what I love the most, even if it's playing music or composing or teaching or anything that has to do with music. And I feel like this is an incredible privilege to do what you love to do and make a living out of that. And like every day of your life, you have to feel like, wow, this is unbelievable. And I do appreciate that very, very, very much. And for that reason, I do everything it takes. I practice as much as I can. I teach. When I go on the road, I learn all the music. I usually, if I play with a band, I memorize all the music before I go on tour. I mean, I really appreciate it. And for that reason, I do everything in my power that I can to make to serve the music. That's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
I got the gift that I can play this music. So I feel like my role is I need to serve the music and I need to give back whatever I can. And on top of that, whenever you think you are giving 100%, you can always go beyond that. And you are like I was just talking about this to one of my students, that when I was 14 years old, I went to high school. I used to practice 1 or 2 hours, and I thought that was my 100%. And
Right. And it was at that time.
it was.
Yeah.
And when my teacher pointed out that if I keep going like this, they're gonna expel me from the school, then I realized, oh, I could actually practice 5, 6, and 7 and 8 hours.
Thank you very much. My personal
uh,
waiter is here.
Very good.
Oh, he made me eggs. Ooh.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Was
Yeah,
there more
so
to that?
yeah, that was it. It's like, whenever you think like, no, I'm doing my best, sometimes you have to rethink. And especially the beginning of the year in January, this is my time when I'm thinking like, am I doing my best? Is this what I
Yeah.
have to do? This is how I have to do. Because sometimes you are running like crazy, but perhaps it's not what you have to do to get what you want. Maybe you have to change. Like if you are running in third gear full power, maybe you have to change to fourth gear, and
Hmm.
then you can go in a lower RPM but faster. So that's something for me. It's like, okay, perhaps there are other things that can help you grow, that can help you. And so I always revisit these things. Like sometimes it's about practicing 7 hours a day, and sometimes it's about sitting down and figuring out, like, oh, if I just do this one thing every day,
Yeah.
then that might get me much more ahead. Or hey, in order to for me to get better as a drummer, I
Yeah.
should learn piano, which is this is one of the things that I've been doing for the last 3 months. Every day
Oh,
I try to get 30 minutes to 1 hour on the piano. So, and it's gonna be a little bit more now.
wow.
So that's one of my things. And then back to composing and back to learning. It's yeah. And honestly, I have like one of my greatest teachers and mentor is Hal Crook. I don't know if
Oh
you.
yeah, sure. Hal Crook. I mean, he was at Berkeley
Yes.
when I was.
Oh wow. So yeah, he was when I was there too.
Oh, he probably was there a long time, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think he retired only like 3 years ago, maybe 4
Oh,
years.
yeah. See, I'm probably 20 years older than you at least, but I went there in 72 to 75.
Wow. So yeah, I came to the States in '98. So, but I already had a college degree when I came here. So
Yeah.
but he was still there. And we talked about this, like he's I remember we were in the Thelonius Monk Institute, and he came
Yes.
to teach us. And one day, and this is a funny story, and I like to say this story. One day he said to me this. He said, wow, Frank, you play so good. You know what would make your playing even better? If you stop playing. And yeah, and exactly. My reaction was like, I started to laugh, and then I saw that he was serious, and then I started to think. I was like, what does he mean? And he said, look, if you're playing all the time, I mean, how much better, how much more what you can play is like what it would make you even a better player. If you don't play, you take it away, and then when you bring it back, has a even a bigger effect. So it's not like he thought
Space, in other words, right?
exactly space.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was one of those things, is like, wow. And every time when I play a gig, I always think about that, and I always think, how can I play less? That's, one of my thoughts, like, wow, how can I make this music sound great and playing less, the absolute minimum that the music really needs.
I would
And
say, I mean, it reminds me of Peter Erskine.
oh yeah, oh yeah, 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 Peter is a master of that. That's why I studied with Peter.
Oh, yeah. He, one time I interviewed him, and he was telling me about when he joined Weather Report, and he had just come from Stan Kenton, I think it was. And so in straight ahead music, you imitate people, right? Like somebody does ba da da da, and you do that too, and that's cool, right? You're doing it right, and so he and Joe Zawinul were standing by a speaker listening to. It might have been a live version of, one of the great songs that they had done live together. Peter had done it, and there was one of those moments, and Peter was really like, he was young. He was like 21 or 2 or something. And so he was real cocky, he was like, hey, yeah. And Joel looked at him and he said, too bad you had to do that. and, and Peter, of course, you can imagine the effect of that. But it totally changed his playing. And he realized that Weather Report was a totally different way of playing, where there's a center that everybody's connected to, and everybody's connections go out, and then everybody does whatever they want, but they're connected to the same center, which that to me, I mean, Weather Report to me was also one of my big influences, along with Bob Moses, who I spoke with here for a few weeks ago. I mean, he was very similar to Weather Report for me. It was like, there were all these incredible influences connected to the same center, but individual. Again, like life, like people. That's what we should be like on planet Earth.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, Peter is, I mean, incredible, and Bob too. I studied with both of them.
That must have been fun studying with Bob too. I can.
Because I, in fact, I just found. I mean, I collect all kind of like flyers and papers and things, and Bob was a big hero for me when I lived in Hungary. So
Oh,
when I went to his first show, I didn't even remember. Just now, I was cleaning out a little bit of stuff. I found the flyer from 1999 from his first, uh, the first show that I went to see, that he played in Boston. I mean, it was not his first show, but the first show that I went to see, and I couldn't believe.
uh,
I think I have it, somewhere.
that's interesting. I actually have never been in. I mean, I've seen him on YouTube, of course, but I have never been. Oh, Lizard Lounge, yeah, man. That's so cool.
Yeah,
I've never seen him play like live.
yeah.
I've talked to him on Zoom, and I've listened to a lot. I mean, I know a lot of those songs really well.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
So, Ferenc, how old are you?
I am 44.
Okay. And so, where are you from, and how did you come up in music? Were you a drummer always?
Yeah, so originally I'm from Hungary. I'm from actually a small village in Hungary that I
Yeah.
love very much. In my village, there are only 1,000 people, or probably now even less because a lot of people left.
Yeah.
But I loved growing up there because you were free. Like my mom was like, go whatever, like all day I was outside of the house and running around. And especially so this is something I never really talk about, that uh, my mom was a teacher. And what happened in Hungary after the Second World War is
Yeah.
the government took all of the buildings from the aristocrats. So schools, they become those buildings, and so when I was a kid, until I was 9 years old, we actually lived in one of those mansions,
Oh.
because they put all the teachers into those mansions. It become like a public housing kind of thing. And I grew up in this, it's like a park, a beautiful park that we had. Like it's a protected by the, like a nature protected place. And the school was right next door. So my mom, I think I was still in kindergarten, like I was 4 or 5 years old, and my mom let me be home alone, because there was like I mean, there were the neighbors, and it was just like a park, like you cannot do any, like incredible place to grow up there. And so my father's side, actually my mom also, she was teaching music in the school, like singing and all that. And so the grandfather of my mom was the organ player in the church.
Oh, yeah.
And so my father played drums, my uncle played the accordion, my cousins play, everybody. So in the family, both sides actually, everybody played music. So and me as a little boy, a boy, you always look up to your father. You want to be like your father, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
and and since I was a kid, since I can remember, I always knew I wanted to be a drummer because of my father. And things that I can't remember is that I have pictures of me playing since I was 3 years old. So by by the time I had to make a decision, I always knew that I want to be a drummer. And I had to go through different things. Like we are talking about, like sacrifices and things like this. Is like you think, oh, your life is so great. Yeah, for me to get into high school, it was really challenging. It was really difficult. In Hungary, there were like four of these high schools, special schools for musicians, classical musicians. And the one that I got into, like in my area, which was like a 3 hour bus drive, um, I there were two schools. And the one that I got into, it in my year, they took four percussion players. So it's like it's super super highly competitive. And so from the age of 13, I was taking piano lessons once a week. I was taking three percussion lessons and five solfege per week.
Wow.
Yeah, because there was, and not only that, but I did that throughout the summer as well, between
Wow.
seventh and eighth grade, to be able to get into the school. Because I wanted to be a drummer, but the only official way is if I study classical music. There was not like, okay, you are 14 years old and you study these grooves, and or
Yeah. Yeah.
so they said, okay, if you want to do this, that's what it takes. And I was like, fine. but definitely, I met my solfege teacher like 10 years ago, and she said, wow, sometimes I think about those times and I feel bad, because I remember my house every day, and sometimes you came at 6 in the afternoon and I gave you homework for the next morning at 10 o'clock. And, like we spent 2 hours of
Wow.
solfege. Then I
Yeah.
went home, did the homework, and the next morning at 10 I was back. And but that was the only way I could make it. And thank God, because once I got to college, like I never had to take like all this solfege and harmony and all these things. Like I just, by the time I was 15 years old, we were writing a four-way chorals, a Bach chorals. You had to
Ah,
write down by ear, and so I
wow.
didn't have problems with these things. So I'm thankful I did that early on, because that opened up a lot of things. And until today when I play, I don't have to. I mean, I read music obviously, but I can rely on my ears, and I know where we are, what we do. So that's super cool. It's
Wow, that's great. That's amazing.
there is always an upside of, yeah, like the struggles that you go through.
Yeah.
And I like to compare this one with the airplane. If the airplane didn't have any what is it, with the air, like it needs some kind of struggle
Oh,
to
yeah, there it's like resistance. Yeah,
resistance, right?
yeah,
So it needs the resistance to get to the air, right?
yeah.
So if we don't have that in our life, then I feel like then we're not gonna get into our higher goals and achieve greater things. So these things are important.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's, see, this is why I think we're from the same place because, like, some of what you say is going bing, bing. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for binging me.
Well, thank you for asking me to be here with you. It's great.
I love this. It's such a great, it's so inspiring, and I know it's really good for people to tap in, and get away from the worries of the days,
Mm.
for a little while and be inspired, like your idea of resistance, I mean, that's I was telling you that I have this book that I've been writing, about the philosophy of life and singing and jazz, how the lessons are similar in all of them. And of course, and those are just the things I know about. So in everything, it's like the inner game of tennis or the art of tennis or all of those books. They're all actually focusing on that. But the word resistance is a really great word because that is so applicable to both jazz and to voice technique. I mean, voice technique resistance is really, really what it's about. And and like I said, I'm reading The Inner Game of Music, and that's what they're talking about too. They're talking about the resistance of there's two minds, one mind. Well, I won't go into the whole description because I'm only at the beginning of the book. But anyway, resistance is, as you say, it's not something to throw away. It's something to accept and to work with to achieve a balance. And that's really what brings us joy, is achieving balance.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. There is a, I don't know if you follow some of these guys. Brandon Burchard is kind of like a great guy that I've been in a mastermind with him, and he says that honor the struggle, you know,
Yes.
and that is so important. It's like, yeah, honor every minute of it, because that's what makes you actually grow. That's all the challenges in our lives are the one that makes us be better. And even if it's a relationship with a partner or with the family, everybody is teaching us something. And whatever we feel, whatever we, our reactions that we have, is not that we can get it from anybody, right? Certain people bring us certain reactions or certain situations, and we have to appreciate so much, because it's like, oh, I just learned something about myself. Let me see how I can deal with that. What I
Mhm.
can do, what is important about that? Why this person can make me feel this way? Why I create these
Yeah.
feelings, right? What's that? Because I say that it's beautiful, no matter what and who make you feel. It's like, wow, there's something magic, because most of the time, most of the people you look and you say, it's like, I don't care, whatever, right? It has no effect on you. It's like, it's nothing.
Yeah.
But some people that can make you feel either if it's hate or anger or love, whatever it is. But those are very important things, because it's like, why, like, why am I feeling this way? Why this situation? Is there something that is inside me that I have to deal with, that I have to work on? And those, all of those situations and all of those people in our life, they are teaching us something. And life always gives us challenge to overcome and to grow. Because people think like, why is this happening to me, like, oh, no, 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 life is giving you little challenges to deal with. And when you can deal with the little ones, then life gives you a little bigger ones. And when you can deal with the bigger ones, then life, and that's the beauty. And if you can't deal with that, then you're always going to deal with the little things in life. But when you overcome, and you feel like, wow, I did this, now I can do this, oh, I can overcome this challenge, then you get a bigger one. Then you reach more people. Then when you can overcome huge things, then you can reach people and help them overcome their things. And I mean, I this is something I love about life. It's like, all right, let's see. And of course, sometimes I'm human, I feel frustrated, and
Of course.
I do all those things. But at the end of the day, I always remind myself that it's for a reason. We
Yeah.
get these challenges for a reason. And life always, I feel like life always gives us the exact amount of challenge that we can deal with.
Yes, exactly.
It's and sometimes it's super difficult. And you know I remember losing my grandparents. That was like, in 4 years I lost all four of my grandparents.
Wow.
And we were so close. In fact, until I was 2 years old, we lived together with the parents of my father. So we were super, super connected. And that was a very difficult moment in my life, but I appreciated every moment of that. I was like, wow, we had such a strong relationship. I feel so, like, sad. But the only reason I feel sad losing them is because we had this strong relationship. Some people lose their grandparents, is like, all right, it was time for them to go.
Yeah.
And for me, I remember, like, for years I was dreaming with my grandparents, and um I couldn't even talk about my grandfather, the father of my father. We were like friends, we were like this. I couldn't even talk about him because I would just tear up, I was, and every time I didn't think about, like, how unfortunate I am to lose them. I thought, wow, how lucky I am. And until today, when I go out for a walk every day, I say my thank yous, and that's one of them. I say thankful, like, I'm so thankful that they were in my life until I was 33 years old. I'm like, how incredible that they were in my life, and I had all those beautiful, beautiful moments. It's just, I think it's, and now during this time, it's even more important to bring these things up, and just like we said in the beginning, like, appreciate all these moments, and just understand, like, whatever we go through, we're gonna remember that, and we're gonna remember, like, how did you go through 2020, what
Yeah.
were, and I started to, last year I started to do journals, and I write down my thoughts, things that I do, and then I do a weekly review, like, okay, how did it go, what did I accomplish, what I want to work on. And I have the monthly, when I say, like, this month I need to do this, need to do that. So I feel that, like, even though 2020 was super difficult, but it taught me so much,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I also feel like it was as bad as it was. Like, I went from traveling 220 or 230 days a year to zero, zero, right? So
Yeah.
that's a huge cut in my life. Yet I felt incredibly, like, grateful for not being sick, for being able to stay with my wife every day that I never had in my life, for I had some students. I've been so creative, and doing, like, the first 2 months, I think I did about 50 duo videos, with other musicians. I
Yeah.
reached out to all my friends because I was missing them. And so these things are like, yeah, we went through a rough time, but what is it that you're going to remember? Like, that you were sitting home depressed, or like, I want to remember, like, wow, okay, what ideas can I come up with? Like, what can I do to make this better? And this is going to definitely define the rest of our life. Like, okay, this was a turning point in our life. And I think the world needed a little bit of a calming.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, you
Yeah.
know, it actually kind of stopped the forward motion of the earth hurting, and it gave some healing to the planet as well.
Yeah. Remember, the after 1 month, or the I don't know if you saw the images, the dolphins were coming back to Italy,
Oh,
the coast, and I mean, there were
wow.
some incredible things happening, and I think the earth was kind of like, I can breathe now.
I think so too. Actually, the birds were more present, That's what I noticed.
Oh,
Yeah, they were more
yeah.
like, oh, hello, feels good. Yeah,
Yeah. People were not moving that much. Airplanes were not moving. There was not much activity.
yeah.
And I think all the animals, they felt like, oh, wait a second. This we belong here. Humans took over so much. And so, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, but that's so true. It's really it's true what you say, all of that stuff. And it also made me think of lessons that are karmically. That's what I mean. I've always noticed that I have the same lesson over the years, the many years. I'll have the same lesson 3 to 5 times at least. The
mhm.
same lesson. Sometimes it has different clothes on, but it's the same lesson. And then I'll realize that. I'll say, "Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, it's that image of, oh, you're hitting your head on the wall and finally you go, ow." you know. And so yeah, so that I think I've always been aware of, and um like you say, lessons. I definitely agree with you on all of that stuff, and even the lessons that have hurt me. In fact, I was thinking this morning. When I woke up, I was reading, and I was thinking of this musician who I had a long time relationship with, traveling with, recording with, and we had amazingly great times. I mean, everything from absolutely hysterically funny, you know, to brilliant concerts, like, you know, he's a pianist, he and I on a huge stage in a concert hall of 2,000 people in Japan, and everybody listening like they were listening to a pin drop, and it's just so much great stuff. We had a really weird falling out, and I felt maybe now is the time to write him a letter and get back in touch. And I was thinking in my mind of the letter, and of course soon I got into talking about what had happened in the fight. And I thought, no, that actually shouldn't be part of it. If I did want to, say hello, I should just say hello, and
Yeah.
that I appreciate what we had, and that's about it. Because the lesson in that, there was something that I had to learn, and I did learn something, and whether he learned something or not, I don't know, but but yeah, the lessons are really interesting. I noticed that you're on, by the way. I noticed that you're here too, and there's a lot of people who apparently know you, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's really cool. And even people who know you're the guitarist that was in the trio.
Yes.
Um, yeah,
Yeah,
and
Gilad has been on the scene for quite some times now. I've met him. I think he moved to New York in 2005.
yeah,
And I met him. Now I don't remember if it was through Omer Avita's band or Anat Cohen, but definitely we played with Anat Cohen's quartet for about 2 years.
yeah. Wow.
No, and then I played in Gilad's band, and Gilad played in my band, and we've been just on and off playing for a long time. And he's an incredible musician, and he's a great friend of mine. Not only, like most of these relationships, they are friendships,
Yeah,
and we also play together.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's that's what I that's what I love mostly about the music scene here is not just you are like, okay, let's play with somebody, but you have these friendships and you also play together. So I think that comes through the music.
yeah. I love that too. I have a group called The Moment, and we're very quirky. I always, when I'm writing PR about it, I always say we're quirky. But
Mm.
there's a great pianist, really smart guy and great pianist, Gary Fukushima, and he,
Yeah, I know Gary.
you know him? Maybe you played with him when you were here.
I don't think I've played with him, but I know Gary. Gary used to write also for
Yeah, he writes now for
what is
one of the
it? The
main.
Yeah, was
I
was
know.
he
Now I'm thinking
was he
he still
writing for
writes
the
for
LA
them.
Times?
Sorry?
Was he writing also for the LA Times or something?
Yeah, he was writing for that, but now he actually writes for one of the main jazz magazines,
Mm,
one of the main ones.
yeah.
Anyway, but he's an incredible pianist with incredible rhythm. I mean, he's a guy who I'm not, such a fan of playing with people who play always on one, right? And he he really favors, like not playing on one. And so he plays in the group. Actually, mostly he plays keyboards, and then there's no bass player, and the percussionist is Brad Dutz,
Hmm.
and the tenor player is Chuck Manning,
Uh-huh.
and guitarist is Jeff Richmond.
Okay.
And so Jeff Richmond plays kind of like Schofield. And anyway, it's just a really quirky group. But and I can totally not remember why I even brought up The Moment. Something about what you were saying. Oh, friends.
Friendship and the music, yeah.
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 I have a friendship with each one of them, and it really serves the music. It really serves the music because you're amused, you're in love, you're talking, in the music, and it's just, yeah, it's really a beautiful thing when you have big friendships with the people that you're playing with. I mean, it's nice to be supported by people, you know, Peter Erskine was on one of my records, and Mark Johnson, and I didn't really know them that well,
Mm.
but of course, they supported the music, and I was in heaven. It was a great experience. But it's another thing when you really know the people and you really love them, and then something else grows out of that. It's really quite a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think there is something about when you are with people that you really trust and you have this great relationship, you have this spontaneity that you are free to express yourself in any way you want, and that freedom. So I remember, so when I got to the Monk Institute, we met there. Herbie Hancock was the like part, and Wayne Shorter, they were like advisors and everything. So after a year we had this concert with Herbie Hancock, and by the time we developed this relationship, we were meeting a few times and all this, and we had this concert in Paris. And what happened is, obviously, I was nervous, right? So after the sound check, I asked Herbie, I was like, hey, do you want me to play in a certain way or something? And he just said, this is, and until today, I have this moment with me. He said, no, 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 just play whatever you play, and I will react to that. And that gave me like, okay, it doesn't matter what I'm gonna do. He's going to make it sound good. He's gonna make it sound right. And this kind of like an approach, like a childish, like whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
When you have that, I think that gives you, again, gives the music a chance to go to whatever direction the music wants to go. And I've seen an incredible show. Uh, Charlie Hayden, Paul Motion, Lee Konitz, and Brad Meldau. They were playing here at Birdland, and I remember, they came on the stage and looking at each other and, what do you want to play? I don't know. Start. and out of that you start to create music. But when
Yeah.
when you are afraid, and when you are thinking like, oh, what is this musician gonna think if I play this, or then that doesn't give you the freedom, that doesn't give you the creativity. You are blocking yourself, you are closing yourself, you are thinking what is right instead of thinking what the music needs.
Yeah.
And so when you surround yourself with people, like you said, like Gary, and like the people that you trust and you have a great relationship with, like I have with Gilad and Chris, when I'm playing, I'm nothing. And I haven't listened to this recording that you put on. That was a surprise. I didn't know you will do that. I haven't listened to it since a year and a half at this point, and I was like, wow, this sounds so great. And it just reminded me of that. Like I remember how I felt playing, just just go wherever we go, like the groove changes. None of this was planned, you
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
a lot of things happened that even didn't happen after other gigs, or I played this music with other people but didn't happen just because it didn't go in that direction.
Yeah.
And so when you play with people like that, you are like, okay, whatever happens, happens. And you are not thinking like, oh, what they gonna think, or what. You just play and allow the music to go to places.
Yeah.
And this is not for, I have to say that this is not for everybody, because I've played with people that they want the music in a certain way, and they have the idea like, okay, this is going to be the beginning, this is that, whatever. Like they are very specific, and the groove has to be this, and it has to be this tempo every time. And I'm not like that. So that's why I also mention Herbie and Wayne, because they very much influenced me, the way I think about my music and my band, because they are so into that, like whatever happens at the moment,
Yeah.
that's what matters. In fact, I remember before one of the shows, I've asked Herbie, I said, wow, it's like, how do you do that? Like you've been playing Cantaloupe Island for, at this point, 50 years, 45, and how do you do that every time when you play, first of all, you play incredible, you play better, and like never. And it's a tune with four chords. How you get yourself so inspired and so excited to play on those four chords, and then play a solo that is like, every time you can listen to any recording, it's always like unbelievable, any live show, right? and and he said that, he said, yeah, before, every time when I play this tune or any tunes, when I sit down to the piano, I look at the piano like if this was the first time I ever played.
Mm.
And that made me understand, like, when you are not thinking what you're supposed to do, when you are not thinking how this should sound, and that allows you to just create, which for me, that's what jazz is about. For me, jazz is the most creative art form. And I mean, even I love classical music, I love pop, rock, funk, soul, anything you mention, I love. But that kind of, even in classical music, when you have contemporary classical music, a composer tells what everybody has to do. and then they do it that way. Like in jazz, four people sits down and they gonna start to play, and suddenly magic. That's creation. That's like God is creating something, but now we have a little something to do. We can tap into that. um I want to say is like, I don't know. I don't know what is that space. You know what I'm talking about. It's a space, it's a higher consciousness or whatever you want to call, but
Yeah.
we can tap into that. And when you have three, four, five people together, you are able to enter into another dimension that you cannot do it by yourself.
Yeah.
And so when people allow you to do that, then you can come up with some new things, and most of the time the mistakes are the ones that you are like, oh, that's cool.
Right. I call that the aesthetic universe, by the way. I'm
Okay.
always talking about that with my students. And again, as I said, I'm reading The Inner Game of Music, and exactly what you just said is what they're talking about. Those
Mm,
two I forget what he doesn't call it brain one or think. I think he said like personality one and personality two, where the one is the thinking and the, you know, oh, that sucked, or, whatever is in there. And the other one is this total freedom. And yeah, it gave a really interesting example. It said, while you're reading this book, say out loud what you're thinking, which is, it's interesting. And then that was a great simple exercise to get for your students or whatever. You actually have the person observe in themselves that that voice that
mm,
says all the crapola. As my girlfriend used to call it, the suck monster. The suck monster would be sitting on your shoulder saying, oh, that sucked. Stuff like that. And for me, how I used to deal with that was I just thought I would acknowledge that whatever was there, like in a suitcase, and just say, okay, I know you're there, but doesn't matter. I'm still going to do what I want to do. And that way I didn't have to totally deal with how to stop the suck monster or whatever you want to call it. But I could just say, I'll deal with you whenever I deal with you. But right now, I'm going to do what I want to do.
right.
And so, yeah, it's really, um, really interesting and wonderful. I want to know, I'd like to know, um, I mean, you have, you, I mean, this, and actually, I want to go and hear some more music too.
Mm,
But let's just take this trio, for instance. Chris Potter is kind of one of the heroes of the planet in jazz, and obviously, from what I've read about you and what I know about you, you've played with a lot of really wonderful top players. And I'm just curious at that point, it was there. I'm not sure of the exact question, but I'm curious. Was there a point where you were growing as a musician, a young musician, and you started meeting, being friendly with, started playing with really great players who were, world renowned? And was there a like an observation of yours that thought that, like looked at that and said, oh, wow, I'm playing with really great players? Or what was it exciting if you did, or did you just like go, oh, great, okay, and then kind of forget about it and move ahead?
no, I definitely, like I talked about this earlier. I really, really appreciate, playing with those incredible musicians. That's what keeps me playing. It's just like, for me, um, this feeling when I play with someone, uh, that gives me this pleasure that I can't honestly describe it. It's just is just so beautiful. And I remember when I moved here in 2003, and just like a few months later, I played the first time with Chris Cheek. And I remember with his band, we were playing in a place called Detour. It doesn't even exist anymore, but I still remember. I remember being there, and like, obviously I don't 100% remember every gig, but the first time I play with someone, or some important shows or something, and I remember that, and I carry those feelings with me even more now that I'm not playing, because of COVID. And so I really, really appreciate it, and I was super excited always to play with these musicians, and afterwards, even listening to the music, and just remember, like, wow, how it feels to play with these guys. It's just, for me, it's not something like, all right, this is done, next. No, in fact, for this reason, I always say, like, I would, if people ask what would you do even if you don't get paid, I would still do the same thing, because it gives such an incredible feeling that, I started to play this music not because I was thinking like, oh, I'm gonna make a living. In fact, most people said you cannot make a living playing jazz, right? So I'm like, whatever. It's not maybe I have to do something else to make a living, but I want to play with these people. And until today, well, things have changed, obviously, because you start to play and then you make a living. But for me, the first thing is always like, wow, it's such an incredible feeling. You hear Chris Potter, like, even the sound, or Gilad, and or any of the musicians that I played before, and it brings this feeling that is like, wow, this is unbelievable. So definitely for me, this is not something like, oh, okay, that was great, gig is done, how much it pays, you know
Right,
yeah.
right. Hey, let's go listen to some of your music.
Thank
I'll
you.
share the screen with you, and you can direct me. And
Oh,
there was, of course, that, and then if I went back to your name, oh, I should go to YouTube probably, and
I
then.
think so.
Uh, so I mean, I'm just gonna go to YouTube and see. But um,
Okay, so that's my new album. This is just a teaser
oh,
of the album that came out. It's called Freedom, and this one came out last year, 2020, and we got the Independent Music Award. So I'm very, very happy for that. I'm very thankful. And the album is with Gregory Tardy on saxophone and Tsumo Arpad on piano. And this is basically a continuation of a I started to have these bassless bands in about 2010,
oh,
about 10 years ago.
yes.
And this one is even so, the album before I had with Joshua Redman, Lionel Loueke, and Kenny Werner also does not have a bass. And then this is also the same without a bass. The only difference here is a couple of years ago, I started to use my vocal harmonizer, as you saw in the other video too. So now I have that addition. So no bass, no guitar. Instead, we have piano and keyboard, saxophone, and I do a lot of vocal harmonizer things. So, and
Cool.
yeah, yeah. So that's just like, yeah, this is, I think it's a short, like a 1 minute video from the studio with this new music, and there are some
Cool.
things.
And what did you say you did one with Kenny Werner and who?
And Joshua Redman,
Oh
and
man, got to hear something from that too. Okay, so let's listen to this one, and that intrigues me because I don't know. Well, I mean, you know, I told you about my group with no bass player, so kind of intrigues me there.
all right, okay.
Okay. Oh, that was quick.
Little teaser, you know.
Sounds
Yeah.
great. And then, so then if I put you and Kenny Werner and is that here? Do you think?
Probably yes. If you put the album is called Triumph, so perhaps if you put um, yeah, I think it's like the YouTube videos, whatever they added to the YouTube music. These are all the duo videos that I've done in the summer.
Oh, interesting. Oh, I
Yeah,
definitely want to see some of this too.
yeah,
What
and
what might be a good one to listen to?
oh, wow, they are all different. So I don't know. That's a good question. There is one with let's see with Dean Brown. That's an interesting one. You know Dean in LA. I'm sure.
Dean Brown. Why does
Yeah,
that sound familiar?
incredible guitar player. He's in LA and he plays with all the
Oh,
different amazing musicians.
that sounds familiar. Like this right here.
Yeah, yeah.
So that looks like three guitar players. Oh, it's
Yeah.
Dean. Yeah, that was pretty intense. I
Yeah.
noticed I noticed that it says drum school.
Yeah. So that
Yeah. I actually have that app.
oh yeah, that's my app.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not. So yeah, I haven't
Wow. I've had that for a while. It's just
actually.
it's really good, especially for a singer to have because you never have stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, congrats for having it.
That's so cool. Man, you made that a while back.
Yeah. So that's been in the App Store for 10 years now.
That
And
is so cool. I really I'm so I'm
yeah.
so blown away. That's wild.
So
Cool.
the story of that one is about well, I started to think about maybe 12, 13 years ago to do a DVD, an instructional DVD, and my very close friend, my best friend Massimo Biorcati, the bass player, that we were in Berklee together in the Monk Institute, and we lived in New York since a long time. So he said, instead of doing a DVD, which once you are done, it's done, you cannot change. Why don't we do a application that you can change, you can add, you can do whatever you want with it?
Yeah.
Well, sure, I'm into it. So Massimo, who is the creator of iReal Pro, which I'm sure you have,
Wow, cool.
so Massimo, he did all the design, he did everything, and then he taught me how I can do updates. And of course, I did all the recording and the programming and everything. And so we created this app together that I did it because it has over like 400 grooves and fills, the app
Yeah, yeah.
historical notes. And I created also for myself because so many times, like here in New York, I play with the Cuban guys, and then I play straight ahead jazz, and I play some funk, play this, and I was like, wow, I need something like a vocabulary, that you have all this, and that's what I did. I just recorded all these different grooves from all over the world: Brazilian, Afro-Cuban, some
Wow.
African, and then of course all the pop rock, heavy metal, fusion, Dixieland. What?
Wait, so you're the guy actually playing?
Yeah, that's me.
Oh, so that's another reason why you look familiar.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, I have the hat, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit difficult, like. um,
Yeah, that's really cool. And I have a quick little insert of a funny story. When I was at Berkeley,
yeah.
and they didn't have vocal at the time. I was always a singer from when I was born, but I also played da, 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 at Berkeley. So when I left Berkeley, the year I left, they started the vocal department. But my friends, my two friends, whose names I won't really say because of obvious reasons, they created the real book. And and they worked like 6 months on the real book. And then the day after it came out, somebody copied it and sold it for $5 less. And it was really, sad. But anyway, both those guys are still musicians, and one actually owns a music library. And so that's, why I don't want to say their names, but but anyway, isn't that wild? It's really a small world, very connected. Wow. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's why, every video you can see, because I think I don't remember how I did it, but on YouTube you can set a logo that is
Yeah.
there all the time. In fact, some of the video, because I forgot about, so some of the videos I added the logo, and then there is the default logo of YouTube, so there is like two times on top of each other, because I don't remember how I did it, but anyway, that's my hobby.
That's wild. Yeah, that's really wild. Okay, so I'm going to go back because that was really fast. So I'm going to go back to looking for what we originally were looking for, which
Yeah,
was uh, Kenny Werner. Whoops, Werner,
yeah,
and
the first one. Check
okay,
that's Yeah, that one is not a full song, but yeah, this is the project that I had, the Triumph project, and this one is with actually Chris Potter and Greg Tardy. So this was a live concert in Hungary in 2014, I believe, just like right after my album came out.
cool. Okay, it's exciting.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was another great moment. That I remember so beautiful being being on the road with that band also, and playing that music. This has been an incredible experience that I have to say. Coming here to the States from Hungary, like imagine you come not only you come from a small place like a small village, but you come from a country that most people didn't even hear about here. And for me, being in the States is like, wow, it's an incredible thing. And playing with some incredible musicians just in the school already, like in Berklee, when I was in Berklee and I played with some amazing musicians. For me, that was already like, wow, this is unbelievable. And then when I moved to New York or in LA, in LA, I played with Bob Sheppard, played with Billy Childs. I mean, some amazing musicians. And same here in New York. That's just like always like, wow, this is just like the dream of the dream of the dream come true, because there are so many ways that you can just fall out of this, like there would have been so many easy way of what I'm trying to say is not easy at all to succeed and to be in this group, in this society. And you really have to work on your personalities. I mean, i'm I'm talking about this with my students and with other musicians too. It's one thing how you play. Yes, if you want to be part of this music society, then you have to play in a certain way. There is no other way. You got to be playing in a high level. But on top of that, that's not enough. I've seen so many incredible musicians and then they were gone.
Yeah.
Or like look at Jaco Pastorius, right? I mean, there are just so
Yeah.
many names that I could, being in New York and then he died. So it's
Yeah.
it's not just like, oh, you play great and you no, when you are in New York, um you gotta compete with Jeff Watts is here and Bill Stewart is here and Eric Harland is here, like Adam Nussbaum is here. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, you are in New York and then great, life is great. It's like,
Yeah.
well, and it's not enough to play good. You play good, but you gotta be also, you have to bring your personality, and you have to have a great personality, because people don't want to hang around you if you don't have a good personality. So you got to work on your music, and you got to have to work on your who you are as a person. And this is something that people who never lived here, they don't understand, or they, or in LA, or any of the places where there is a hub.
Yeah.
and and people from outside, they're like, oh yeah, if you live in New York then it's easy. It's like, no, no. And I know what it takes. And for me also, it wasn't like, I woke up one day and I was on the top of the world. I know the steps. It's so difficult, and there are so many ways that you can just be out in a minute. You can ruin your reputation, everything, like even to the point of who you recommend. Like if I cannot do a gig, or if like, who
Yeah.
would you recommend? Like that can burn your reputations. Like there's so many little things. Or in my case, I've had, so I was on a student visa. Then I had to get an artist visa. And then after my first artist visa in 2006, I tried to get a green card. So for a year, I was going with what they called, I had this paper, it's called the advance parole. And I was traveling back and forth to the country with this paper. Every time when I came back to the country, they took me to the office. ask me a million questions, and like you think like, wow, at any moment anybody can decide like, what, we don't admit you, and you
Yeah.
can be, like. And I had another artist visa, and I had 4 artist visas before I got my green card. And then I got my green card, and just this year, last year, 2020, finally I got my citizenship. But it's just like so many little steps that you have to do, and if one of them goes wrong, you are out. I know people who lived here, and then they were traveling, they moved back, they didn't watch the days that they've been traveling, and then finally they lost their green card, and then after 20 years you come back as a tourist. I mean, like, it's just it's difficult. It's very, very difficult, and for this reason I appreciate every moment that I have, because I know it's not easy. I know, at least for me.
Well,
So,
I think maybe you realize it a lot, and maybe some people don't even see it, you know.
of course, of course, of
Yeah.
course. So,
Yeah.
when I yes, sometimes when I'm in the situation, like, my first album was John Patitucci, Lionel Loueke, this incredible guitar player, Aaron Parks on piano, and I have Chris Cheek and Mark Turner on saxophone, right? And I was 27 years old, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna record this album with these people. I called them, and we already knew each other, and they were like, yeah, sure. And now, funny thing is, now when I sometimes I listen to the album, or someone puts it on, and it's like, oh wow, I forgot. And now I'm thinking, it's like, wow, I needed some balls to call these guys. And like now I put it in a different perspective. It's like, wow, I did that, and the music sounds great. I mean, I'm not saying, but the people, the way they play, and I'm not talking about myself that I was great, but I'm just saying, like, what, I've done that, and and now I'm looking at it is incredible, and
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, that was a big thing. Like, sometimes, when I called Chris Potter and Gilad Hexamon to do this tour, it was like, hey guys, can you do this tour? Yes, we can do. All right, let's do it. I write the music, I do this. We did the tour. It was fantastic. But when a little time passes, it's like a year and a half after, I'm like, this was an amazing project. Like, even when I played it, when you play it, when you are doing it, you realize it, and you are like, wow, this is great. This feels
Yeah.
good. But then some time passes, and you are like, wow, that was amazing. Like, especially now that I'm not doing, like, I play a few gigs here and there, and it's like, you know what? I'm so happy I've done it. And sometimes you invest your time, your money, all your effort and everything, and you hope that you're gonna make it through, and at the end you just have this beautiful product, and you are like, I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad. And I tell you another story that is, I don't talk about this much, um, but so my grandfather was in the Second World War, and he had a lot of, like, he got a lot of money from Jewish people, and so all of the money that he had, he went, whenever there was a chance, he went to a party, and he just paid the musicians. In Hungary they have these crazy parties, bought them the drinks, the cigarettes, and everything. And my grandfather used to tell me, he said, when I was out in the front, and I hear the bullets next to my ear and the bombs, I said to myself, wow, you did so good to just spend all that money and party. You never knew when your life was over. But I think about this often. It's like, it doesn't matter. Spend whatever it is, and just like now, because some of these projects, like before I went on tour, like I work by myself. I have some promoters helping, but it's my investment. So buy all the plane tickets, sometimes I was out before I went on a tour, like 15, 20,000, like 6 months ahead, right?
Yeah.
And I spent that money and hoping, like, all right, I hope I'm gonna make back some of that, or but I'm so glad I did it, and I would do it again, because it's just like an incredible thing that at the end I have. And if I was thinking like, no, I can't afford, and I used credit cards, I did whatever, and if I would have thought like, no, I can't risk that or that, then I wouldn't have these projects, and then I wouldn't have this amazing experience. So I'm so happy I did anything that, like, especially now. This is such a moment. I never listened to my albums, I never listened to my YouTubes, and I never watched those things. And so you are taking me back to some moments, and wow, it's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, that's oh yeah. That's so interesting though. Yeah, I mean, the moments when you live in the moment, which we do, and especially when we're like you and I working and doing things, and there's always some kind of a project going on, and then you think about and talk. Actually, these talks a lot of times, well, I mean, all the time, really, people have incredible histories. They've
Mm,
done something. I mean, everybody does. If I asked a person who's not a musician, in our audience, tell me something that was amazing that happened to you. Of course, everybody has those moments, and we don't tend to kind of look back at them and think about it,
mm,
and it is really, it's a really interesting thing to take pause and
mm,
to again, be very thankful and for the lessons and for the joy that comes.
mm.
It's really quite a beautiful thing to do that. Um, in fact, my friend Roland, he said he bought a Tesla and he has 13 guitars.
I see that. I see that. You
Yeah,
need good Roland. That's what it is. I mean, these moments, these moments sometimes, I mean, none of the moments are coming back, right? We
right.
take a breath and that moment doesn't come back, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
breathe in, breathe out, the moment is
Past.
gone.
Yep.
And you gotta do sometimes some things that you might think, wow, later you think, wow, maybe this was crazy, but you know what? You did that for that time, and that's what it is. And then you move on, and then I remember, like, I used to live in Williamsburg here in Brooklyn, and at some point I got so tired of it. Well, tired of. I had a cheap apartment, a rent control. It was amazing, but then I was like, I always wanted to live in a loft. I want to live in New York. I want to live in a loft. So I went, like I went crazy. I look all the papers. I mean, this is years ago, and then I found a huge, like 800 square feet loft, and I said, that's it, I'm taking it. It's time, like, so I lived there. I was living there for a year and a half. And then I said, okay, now I'm ready to move into a nice apartment with a one bedroom. And that, but like, I needed to leave that. And if I didn't do that,
Yeah.
then I would be like, wow, I never experienced that. And I
Yeah.
and it was great for that time. And,
Yeah.
it wasn't like, okay, I'm going to have to live here. I lived, I experienced 1.5 years was enough for me. That was great. I
Yeah.
enjoyed the loft life.
Yeah.
Now I'm moving into a more adult apartment, you know,
Right. Right.
and but we have to do some things like that, even if you do it for 1 month, or you rent a room in the Hilton hotel for a week. I don't know, whatever, where you like, what, I'm
Right.
gonna burn this money, and because this moment is not gonna come back.
Yeah.
And 5 years or 10 years later, you might not feel that way.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah, you're really striking chords. Yeah. You know, I'm 67, and I've married this husband, my second husband. We've been married about almost 20 years,
Wow.
19 years.
Yeah.
But and before that, I was married to a man for 17 years. But it was the kind of situation where I could just do anything I wanted. Actually, that's when I went to Yugoslavia and met Zvonimir. And the thing is, I did a lot of things because I really they spoke to me, they excited me and intrigued me, but also because I figured this is never going to happen again. This
Yes.
opportunity, it's never going to happen again. So I want to do it,
Yeah.
and so I lived a really, full and kind of wild life, for a long time. And it's funny because when I met this husband, my second husband, he was he was more conservative than the men that I had dated or married. Certainly, I had always gone out with real hands-on artists. Although he was a lighting board operator on the Tonight Show for 20 years, so he was an artist, but he didn't think of himself as an artist. So he's very balanced, and somewhat conservative, and I was really blown away by the fact that I was interested in him and that he wanted a serious relationship. And I was so afraid because I had been living this real free existence. And
But you were
when
ready
I
for something else. That's why
Well,
you.
I finally just said, I've been living my wild dream, and this feels really good right now, and I feel like I need this, this balance and this man who's supportive and these things, these real solid things. And I went there and I haven't ever been unhappy about that, And but yeah, the freedom, the I agree about the past, and I always talk about with students, the past is it doesn't even exist really. It's memories, and it's really about the present and the future present. It's like right there. That's it. That's the future present. And it's an interesting thing to teach people about that because, and it's not just us who is teaching it, but it's all these people like Eckhart Tolle and all these people. That's what they're teaching about. And the idea of improvisation, where everybody improvises every single day. They wake up and they're improvising, it's what's happening now. Is it raining? Or all of that kind of stuff. A good friend of mine is Stephen Nachmanovich, who wrote Free Play. Did you ever read that?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you should check that out. It's on the same level, an interesting level as Kenny Werner's book. And Free Play he wrote about 25 years ago. It's called Free Play: Improvisation in Life and the Arts.
Oh wow.
And he's
I
an improvising violinist, and he's a really smart person and great writer. And he recently released his second book, which was really interesting because it was an extension of what he had written, and called The Art of Is. And so anyway, but I highly recommend it. At the very least, Free Play. It's one of those books you open up and it's talking directly to you. Really a great book. But so yeah, so it's really those things. And another reason why I feel like jazz is a really important music to put out there and teach and communicate, because even if you don't talk about it, but you just experience it, you are learning the lessons that we're talking about, the improvisation, how to improvise in life, and about the present, and about these two minds. It's really valuable. I mean, as artists, of course, we're reflecting everything we pick up, but as jazz artists, it's just like you said earlier, it's really an important genre to continue and to introduce.
And you said something so important, and especially with jazz, is that being in the moment when you are playing, and especially, I mean, it can be any music, but especially with jazz, if you are not in that moment, you are missing, like you missing out. And with improvisation, it's not like, if you play a pop gig, it's written what you have to do, and every night it's gotta be the same or better. With a jazz gig, a moment is gonna pass by, you're not even gonna notice if you are not there. And you are missing out. And people who are in the zone, they notice it. So that's why the musicians that we really look up to, they are, in my view, they are so incredible, because every moment was on. This is on, that's it. there's
Yeah.
no there's no like trying, there's no, it's just,
Yeah.
it's on. And so this in life, like you said, we are improvising, and people often afraid of improvisation when it comes to music, although they do it. Like life, you cannot go any moment without improvisation, because you don't know what's going to be your next reaction. You step on the street, a car stop by, I mean, this is, you
Yeah.
can't prepare. You have like an idea, but that's what jazz is about. You have an idea, and how it actually is going to go down, we don't know.
Yeah.
And so this is so important. What you said is like being in that moment. In fact, I talk about this, and I prepare myself. Like when I sit down to my drums, I take a moment when I take a breath, and it's like, from this moment on, nothing exists outside of this. It has to be all music, and I want to be able to hear everything at every time. In fact, Terence Blanchard used to do this exercise with us. He was the musical director when we were at the Thelonius Monk Institute, and he used to randomly stop us, and he would say like, okay, what did the bass player play?
Hmm.
What did the piano player play? What did you play? And then, well, I don't know. It's like, so why did you play it? Or I played this. Okay, you played that. Why did you play that? Oh, because and so he used to do that all the time. And it got to a point where now when I'm playing with a band, or like even during that time, it just developed an automatic awareness of, I'm always listening to everybody. And just most of the time, you just like, okay, let's see, where is my space that I can. But if you are not there for a moment, then it's just like goes out of the window, and you lose that momentum, which never comes back.
Yeah.
And you, like in life, you cannot think about the past, especially when you play jazz. Like the moment is gone, that's it, next,
Yeah.
like be here, and you
Yeah.
cannot plan too much ahead,
Yeah.
because the music may not go there. So you gotta be like this now, and the immediate, after that, it's kind of,
Yeah. It's such an interesting concept. And yeah, it's interesting to explain to people who aren't used to thinking like that, you know.
yeah.
They're not familiar with those ideas. It's really interesting. I remember my husband. So my husband never thought of himself as an artist,
Mhm.
and but he was surrounded by musicians, and he lit every musician that ever was on the show, right? And the first time he and I went to see a concert together. We left, and I was really excited, and I was talking about it, you know, and he got mad at me, and I was like, what are you mad at? And he said, you don't have to explain to me what was happening. And I said, oh, I'm not explaining. This is what we do. This is what we musicians do. We get excited, and then we like talk about it and share it, and you know. And after that, he was, yeah, you know, it was something he was totally unfamiliar with, that particular action that musicians did. And but I mean, he probably did it in his own way, you know, but maybe more silent, you know, maybe more to himself, or you know. But it's interesting to tell people about that, and I think that's partly why I like teaching, to find out. We'll find out both empathetically how somebody is thinking, and then also to try and figure out the concepts that somebody would understand. You know,
Yeah.
it's really fun.
That's, that is so interesting. You say about your husband, because my wife, she's a doctor. So, but inside she's an artist. She's completely artist. Like, sometimes I think which one of us is the crazier. So, but what I love to see is that when we go to a show, or if she comes to my show or whatever, I like to see what she experienced,
Yeah,
like what she heard, because she's not explaining things like I would musically, like the triplets and the 16 whatever.
yeah,
uh, she's explaining what she felt, and she has an amazing sense of who is good and who is not good.
yeah,
Like, it's unbelievable. I remember one time I was just home, and I put on some Keith Jarrett that she never listened to that, right? And she was like, "Wow, this is unbelievable. Who is that?" Like, I mean, I could have put anyone, but what I like is that she explains what she experienced, and then we talk about, like, I tell, oh, this is that, or like
yeah,
sometimes she's like, oh, who is that, or and then I play Miles, and she's like, okay, now I can recognize, you play, even though she went to see George Benson when she was a teenager, so she has some connection to jazz, but in the same time she was not a jazz fanatic at all.
yeah,
I mean, she got into this because of me,
yeah,
and then I opened up this whole world for her. But she's so curious about, like, we're listening to someone who is young, and she's like, "Wow, I like this for this reason or that." Like, he plays something like this, and then she recognized the musicians, and she likes when I explain to her what's happening, and she's like, "Okay, now I understand." So the next time she's like, "Oh, okay, I know what's happening," and I'm like, "Wow, that's so cool." The curiosity, and I love to see. I just recorded my new album, the newest one, so two
yeah,
days, and she was in the studio with me for all the days. And after I like to ask, like, okay, so what do you think? Because she's listening as an outsider, but yet not an outsider, because she understands. Like, she has this understanding about the music, and even though she's not a musician,
yeah.
and she points out so many things that I'm like, oh wow, okay, I didn't think like that. I didn't.
That's so cool, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
my husband used to play drums when he was, 12 or something. And then he didn't, yeah, of course. And he didn't play for years. And shortly after we were married, I totally surprised him by buying him a drum set. And I thought, well, maybe that will, because he has a huge record collection, but it's mostly rock and blues. He's not exactly a jazz guy. So I thought, well, let me buy him some drums. He used to play, and I can get him more into jazz because he'll relate better. So first of all, it was very funny. I wish I still had the recording of his reaction. He was so totally, it wasn't real to him at all that I had bought him a drum set. And
Wow.
I even hired a piano player and a bass player to play with him, and just, for fun. And
Crazy.
he was like totally blown away. And then he started playing again, and eventually stopped because his wrists actually hurt. But
Yeah.
but I got him into that thinking. And so who do you think out of drummers, right? He would choose, coming from rock drummers. He loved Mark Ferber.
Oh wow. Beautiful.
I was so impressed. He loved Mark Ferber. He said, "Oh, wow, he's like a perfect drummer." And I was like, "Amazing." He actually, you know, uh, saw into that universe. It's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, if someone has the sensibility like he has also, then he can tell what is good, what is not good. It doesn't matter. The style doesn't really matter, right?
yeah, I guess.
Yeah, because I think it comes to the essence, the beauty. Like someone who has a good sense of what is beauty, then it can be rock, pop, funk, jazz,
Yeah,
classical.
yeah,
It doesn't really matter at that point because it's not about the style. It's not about anything. It's about the pure beauty, and that's why I think so many people who are not musicians, they can appreciate good music because they just have a sense, even though they cannot play or they don't know how to express themselves through music, but they can listen to and they can appreciate something that is high value.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what should we be looking for in your next productions, or even old productions? What should people think? Oh, I want to find out more about Ferenc. Like, should they look at your website? Should they
Oh,
look you
sure.
up on YouTube? Should they? Well, you obviously have a record coming out.
Yeah. So I'm very basically every day I go live on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I passed about 290 days at this point. Um, it's I started when COVID started, and I practice and I show people what I practice, what I'm working on, and I talk about the things. I started this. It's a series that I do. Is the my thought of the day, and every day
Oh,
I choose a word and I talk about that word. So
how cool. So, what time do you do this?
so right after this, so it's a between like now it's 5, usually around 5:30 I start.
Cool. Wow. I'm gonna have to. And you do it every day?
Yeah, I do it every day. This is
You do it
something
separately on Instagram and Facebook, or do they you just connect?
together. Yeah, simultaneously. I don't know. Um, so this is something where people, can get in touch with me and see what I'm working on, and also I talk about what's coming up, and of course my website tells people what my
Yeah.
projects are and my Facebook, everything. But the most immediate connection with me is that one that every day I talk about some different thoughts, some different things, how I feel, how I would say those are my two main sources of Instagram and Facebook.
I'm definitely what our conversation stimulated for you.
I don't even know yet. It's that's a total improvisation that usually I practice in the afternoon,
Yeah.
and for practicing I just pick something that I've been practicing and I show people. And the last couple of days it has been my big inspiration of my electronic drum kit, and it's been super cool. Some coming up with different grooves. I mean, it makes me play completely different than I usually do, so I show some different grooves, different feels to people, and I talk about different thoughts, what I've been thinking or feeling that day, and hopefully give some inspiration to people how I move forward with my life, especially during this time, and what is important for me. And so, yeah,
Well,
that's
wow. This has been such a great conversation,
yes,
and
definitely.
uh, I'm sure there are people in my audience who are amused because I always like these kind of conversations because
Yeah.
that's where I live too. But it's really great to talk with you and to know what you're doing and to be more introduced to your music. And I'm sure we could talk, longer and longer, but 2 hours
Oh,
is probably enough for a minute. And but I'm going to go on today. I'm going to go on today and see what
thank
you're going to talk about today. And
you too.
that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for giving us 2 hours of your time.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's been really great to talk to you and getting to know you, and also being here with your audience. And I really appreciate it. And this has been a really beautiful, beautiful conversation. And I hope we'll have another one.
Me too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And I'm just going to tell my audience next week is Doug Webb. You probably know Doug Webb.
Yeah.
Doug Webb, great, the really great sax player. He's going to be on Monday. A really wonderful flautist. I don't know if you know Laurie Bell from San Diego. She's she's a really seriously great musician. And Wednesday, I'm having a really dear friend of mine talk about being friends and creating music together. He's a great bass player and singer named Armando Campion, and we've just had so many laughs that would kill you,
Yeah.
because you're laughing so hard. And
Yeah.
but he's a really great musician and friend, and so he's going to be on Wednesday. So that's next week, and a lot
Nice.
of lots more people to talk to.
And thanks for doing this. I think it's so important for people to tune in and connect, and for the audience as well as for you and for other people to reconnect. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you do this. So thank you so much.
Thanks, parents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. I'll see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye.